The twin suns of the desert world burned high in the sky, pouring heat over the endless dunes. Captain Elias Kane walked slowly, his boots sinking into the golden sand with every step. His water pack was half empty, but his spirit was still strong. He was a human explorer, one of the first to set foot on this strange world at the galaxy's edge. His mission was simple: map the desert routes and record what he found. But in truth, he wanted more than that. He wanted discovery, something no map or machine could truly give. The desert was silent except for the sound of the wind moving across the dunes. Sometimes Kane thought he could hear faint whispers in that wind, but he told himself it was only the heat playing tricks on his mind. For 3 days he had walked alone, following old ruins that appeared and disappeared under the sand. His instruments told him there was something important ahead, something large hidden beneath the surface. At last, Kane reached the edge of a rocky canyon. There, rising out of the sand like the bones of some ancient giant, stood a massive stone archway. The arch was carved with symbols he did not recognize. Strange spirals and flowing lines covered every inch of its surface. Some of the markings glowed faintly, as if reacting to his presence. Kane felt a shiver despite the heat. He knew this place was important, but before he could step closer, a deep sound shook the air. It was not thunder. It was not the wind. It was a growl, low, heavy, and full of warning. Kane froze, his hand moving to the small tool on his belt, though he did not draw it. From behind the archway came movement. At first, Kane saw only shifting sand. Then out of the dust, a great beast appeared. It was larger than any creature he had ever seen, standing twice as tall as him. Its body was covered in dark scales that shimmered like metal in the sunlight. Long tusks curved from its jaws, and its 4 legs dug deep into the ground as it walked. Its eyes glowed a soft amber, sharp and watchful. And upon its back sat a figure. It was a girl, though not human. Her skin was pale blue, her hair dark and braided with small beads that glimmered as she moved. Her eyes were bright and fierce like fire against ice. She sat tall and proud on the creature's back, holding a carved staff in her hand. When she spoke, her voice carried across the canyon, strong and commanding. "You shall not pass, human," she growled. Her beasts stamped the ground and dust rose around them. Kane held his ground, surprised but not afraid. He had expected to find ruins, maybe even strange machines, but not a living guardian, and certainly not one so young. He raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. "I mean no harm," Kane said in simple words, hoping she would understand. The girl narrowed her eyes. Her beast growled louder, the sound echoing off the stone archway. She pointed her staff at him. "Leave, this place is not for you." Kane studied her carefully. She was young, perhaps barely more than a child, but her voice carried authority. She believed in her duty. She was not afraid of him, though she clearly distrusted him. He knew then that turning back was not an option, not because he wanted to fight, but because this place held answers. He had to understand why she guarded it. "My name is Kane," he said slowly, pressing his hand to his chest. "Kane." He pointed at the girl, waiting for her to answer. For a moment she said nothing. The beast shifted its weight, snorting as if impatient. Finally the girl spoke one word. "Sira." Kane nodded. "Sira," he repeated, careful to say it right. He offered a small smile, but she did not return it. The desert wind blew between them, carrying silence. Kane looked up at the archway again. The markings glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. He pointed at it, then looked back at Sira. "I want to learn." "Not take, learn," Sira frowned. She did not trust him, that much was clear. Her people had seen humans arrive on other worlds, and perhaps they had learned to fear them. She shook her head firmly. "Humans always want to take. This is ours. You must leave," Kane sighed. He had heard such words before, even from his own kind. Many humans came to new worlds not to share or to learn, but to claim and control. But he was different. He wanted to listen. He wanted to understand what connected these ruins to the galaxy's mysteries. He looked at Sira again. "Maybe I can help," he said softly. He reached into his pack and carefully pulled out a small light device. He pressed it, and soft white light shone from it, brighter than the desert sun but gentle to look at. He placed it on the sand between them and stepped back. Sira stared at it. Her beast growled again, but she calmed it with a touch of her hand. Slowly, she leaned forward on the beast's back and studied the device. The light reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, there was something other than anger there, curiosity. You carry light, she said in her language. Though Kane could only guess from her tone, he nodded, pointing at the device. Light, a gift. Sira tilted her head, confused but thoughtful. She had expected the human to demand entry, maybe even attack. Instead, he offered something small but kind. It unsettled her. Still, she tightened her grip on the staff and shook her head again. You cannot pass, she repeated, though her voice was less sharp than before. Kane stood silently. He did not argue. He simply looked at the archway, then at her, then back at the desert. His silence seemed to confuse her even more. Finally, Kane turned and sat down on the sand, resting his pack beside him. The sun still burned overhead, but he ignored the heat. He was showing her he would not fight, nor would he run. He would wait. Sira watched him for a long time, unsure what to make of this strange human. Her beast shifted again, but she kept it still. She could feel something unusual in the air around the archway, something old and powerful. The ruins responded to the human's presence. She had seen the symbols glow before, but never as brightly as when he approached. Who was he? Why did the stones react to him? The desert stretched wide around them, but in that moment the world seemed very small. Just a girl, her beast, and a human who refused to leave. Sira's grip on her staff loosened slightly. She had said the words, "You shall not pass." She had meant them. But deep in her heart, a question had already begun to form. What if this human was different? The desert sun moved slowly across the sky, painting the sand in shades of gold and red. Captain Elias Kane sat quietly on the ground, his water pack close to his side. He did not move toward the great stone archway. He did not raise his voice. He only waited. Sira, the alien girl on the beast, watched him carefully. She had expected him to grow tired and leave. Most outsiders were impatient. Most humans, she believed, would have shouted or threatened her by now. But this one was different. He sat calmly as if he had all the time in the world. Her beast snorted, restless. Its claws dug into the sand and its long tail swayed back and forth. With a gentle hand, Sira stroked its neck. The creature calmed, but its golden eyes stayed locked on Kane. It did not trust him either. Finally, Sira spoke. "Why are you still here, human? I told you to leave." Kane lifted his eyes to her and gave a small shrug. "I wait," he said simply. He placed his hand on his chest. "Kane." Then he pointed at her again. "Sira," her lips pressed into a thin line. He had remembered her name. She did not like that. It made her feel as if he were not just another trespasser, but someone who wanted to know her. She tightened her grip on her staff. "You cannot pass," she repeated firmly. Kane nodded. He pointed at the archway but did not move closer. "I understand, but—" "Learn," he said slowly. His words were broken, but his tone was soft. He touched the sand, then his notebook, showing her he wanted to write and study, not take. Sira frowned. She understood his meaning, even if his words were clumsy. Still, her heart remained guarded. She had been told all her life that humans were takers. They arrived on other worlds with ships and machines. They dug into the ground, built tall towers, and claimed land as if it were theirs. Her elders had warned her. If a human found their sacred ruins, everything would be lost. Yet here was this man, offering her light, waiting patiently, speaking with hands more than weapons. Her beast growled again, and Sira leaned closer to its ear. She whispered softly in her own language, calming it. Then she turned back to Kane. "If you want to learn," she said slowly, "you must prove it. Words are easy. Anyone can say them." Kane tilted his head, listening. He could not understand every word, but her tone told him enough. He gave a small nod. "Prove," he repeated. Sira studied him for a long moment. The desert wind blew between them, carrying the sound of shifting sand. At last she tapped her staff against the beast's side. The creature lifted its head high and let out a roar that echoed across the canyon. Then with slow steps it began to move. Kane rose to his feet, wary but curious. The girl and her beast walked past the archway, heading deeper into the desert. Sira looked back over her shoulder and pointed at him. "Follow." Kane's brows lifted in surprise, but he felt a spark of hope. She was giving him a chance. Without hesitation, he picked up his pack and followed. The journey was not easy. The desert stretched endlessly before them, dunes rising and falling like waves in a golden sea. The heat pressed down on Kane's shoulders, making every step heavy. His throat grew dry, but he did not complain. He kept his eyes on Sira and the beast, following their path. Sira rode high on the creature's back, watching him. She noticed how the sun burned his skin red, how the sand clung to his clothes, how sweat ran down his face. Any other outsider might have turned back by now, but Kane kept walking. When night came, the desert changed. The heat faded, replaced by a biting cold. The two suns sank below the horizon, and the sky lit up with countless stars. Kane stopped for a moment, staring upward in awe. He had never seen a sky so clear, so full of light. Sira dismounted from her beast and began setting small stones in a circle. She struck two together until sparks caught on dry grass, creating a fire. Kane watched quietly, then offered her a small metal tool from his pack. With a click, it produced a steady flame. Sira's eyes widened slightly. She had firestones, but his tool made the process so simple. She hesitated, then took it carefully. She turned it in her hand, studying it before handing it back. "Strange human things," she murmured. Kane smiled faintly and placed the tool away. He reached into his pack again and pulled out a small packet of dried food. He offered half to her. She shook her head at first, suspicious, but her stomach betrayed her with a quiet growl. Reluctantly, she accepted. They ate in silence. The fire crackled softly. The beast lay curled nearby, its massive body casting long shadows. Its golden eyes never closed fully. It kept watch even while resting. After some time, Kane began to hum softly. It was an old earth song, simple and slow. His voice carried gently through the night air. Sira tilted her head, surprised. The tune was strange, unlike any sound she had heard before, yet it was calming. Her beast lifted its head, ears twitching, and then settled back down, soothed by the melody. Sira stared at him, unsettled. Music was not unknown to her people, but this was different. There was no demand in it, no pride, only calm and quiet strength. She hugged her knees to her chest and tried not to show her thoughts, but something inside her began to shift. The next day they continued their journey. The suns rose high and the desert grew merciless once more. Kane stumbled more than once, his steps heavy, but he never asked for help. Sira's beast could have carried him, but she did not offer. She wanted to see if he would endure. At midday, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Sira's expression grew tense. She tapped her beast with her staff, urging it forward. Kane followed, though the wind grew stronger, whipping sand into the air. The sandstorm came quickly, faster than Kane expected. The sky turned orange and brown, the wind howling like a living thing. Sand stung his skin, filling his eyes and mouth. He pulled his scarf over his face, but it was not enough. Sira shouted something, her voice nearly lost in the storm. Kane saw her beast struggle against the wind, its great body leaning forward to shield her. Kane staggered, nearly falling. For a moment, the storm swallowed everything. Then he saw Sira slip. The beast lowered its head to protect itself, and she lost her balance. She clung to the saddle, but her small body was vulnerable against the raging wind. Without thinking, Kane pushed forward. He reached her side and grabbed her arm, steadying her against the beast's neck. He wrapped his own body around hers, shielding her from the sharp sand. The storm raged on for what felt like forever. Kane's skin burned, his lungs ached, but he did not let go. When the winds finally eased, he collapsed to his knees, coughing. Sand covered his clothes and face, but he was still alive. Sira stared at him wide-eyed. He had risked himself for her, though he could have stayed behind the beast and been safer. She opened her mouth to speak, but found no words. Kane gave her a tired smile and raised a hand weakly. "Safe," he said. Her throat tightened. She looked away, hiding the sudden confusion in her chest. For the first time, she wondered if perhaps her people had been wrong. Maybe not all humans were takers. Maybe some were protectors. The desert trial had begun. For days, Kane followed Sira and her beast across the endless dunes. The journey tested his strength and patience. The heat of the day burned his skin, and the cold of the night cut into his bones. His lips grew dry, his steps heavy, but he never asked to stop. He never complained. Sira watched him carefully from her high seat on the beast's back. She had expected him to give up. Even the strongest outsiders usually broke within a day or two. Yet this human kept moving forward step after step, like the desert itself could not push him away. At first, Sira felt annoyed. She wanted him to quit, to admit he was weak. But the longer he endured, the more something strange grew inside her, a quiet respect she tried not to show. One evening, as the sun sank low, they stopped near a cluster of stone pillars that rose out of the sand like broken teeth. Kane dropped his pack and sat heavily against one, his chest rising and falling with slow breaths. Sira dismounted and began preparing the fire. When the flames burned, Kane pulled out his notebook. He opened it and began to sketch the pillars, his hand steady despite his exhaustion. Sira frowned. "Why do you draw useless stones?" she asked. Kane looked up, smiling faintly. "Not useless. Story," he said, tapping the page. He pointed at the carvings on the pillars, spirals and lines cut deep into the rock. "Old people. They tell story." Sira blinked. No outsider had ever cared for the stones before. Most ignored them or tried to break them apart for treasure. She walked closer, studying his sketches. They were simple but careful, almost gentle. "My people say these stones mark the path to the Heart of Echoes," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Only the worthy can find it." Kane tilted his head. "Heart of Echoes," he repeated. Sira's eyes widened. She had not meant to share that. She pulled her cloak tighter around her and shook her head. "You will not understand." Kane did not press her. He simply nodded and went back to his sketching. His patience unsettled her more than questions ever could. That night, as Kane slept by the fire, Sira lay awake, staring at the stars. She told herself she was still testing him, still waiting for him to fail. Yet deep down she wondered, could he truly be different? The next day, the desert offered a harsher trial. The air grew heavy and the ground grew soft beneath their feet. Soon they reached a wide stretch of sinking sand. The beast could cross, but Kane could not. Sira pointed at the far side. "We go there," she said. "If you cannot cross, you must turn back." Kane looked at the shifting ground. Each step he took sank halfway to his knees. He tried again, but the sand pulled at him like water. His muscles strained, sweat pouring down his face. Sira crossed easily on her beast, its broad feet spreading its weight. From the other side, she watched as Kane fought against the sand. Part of her expected him to give up at last. But he did not. He dropped his pack, tied ropes from it to his waist, and began crawling on hands and knees, spreading his weight across the surface. Slowly, painfully, he moved forward. Hours passed. By the time he reached solid ground, his arms trembled and his body was covered in sand. He collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. Sira stared at him, her eyes wide. She had never seen such stubbornness. "Why do you not stop?" she asked softly. Kane wiped sweat from his brow and smiled weakly. "Because I said I follow," he answered. Her heart twisted at his words. She looked away quickly, hiding her face. That night they camped near a rare oasis, small pools of clear water surrounded by tall desert plants. Sira let her beast drink deeply while Kane knelt by the water's edge. He cupped his hands, drinking slowly, then washed the sand from his skin. The cool water felt like a blessing. When he finished, he looked up at Sira. She was watching him carefully, her staff resting against her shoulder. "You risk much," she said. "Why?" "The desert does not forgive weakness." It would be easier to leave, Kane thought for a moment. Then he tapped his chest. "I am human. We do not leave." He looked at the stars reflected in the pool. "We walk, always walk. Even when it hurts." Sira did not reply, but the words stayed in her mind. Later, as the fire crackled, Kane began to hum again. This time Sira listened more closely. The melody rose and fell like the wind over the dunes. Without thinking, she began to tap her staff against the ground, keeping rhythm. Kane smiled, and together their sounds filled the night. The beast lifted its head, listening, then lowered it again with a deep, calm sigh. For the first time since they met, Sira did not feel alone in her duty. Days passed, each one a new trial. A sudden quake shook the ground, splitting the sand and forcing them to climb a narrow ridge. A swarm of small desert creatures attacked, their sharp legs clicking as they moved, and Kane used nothing but fire from his small tool to drive them away. Through every challenge, he stayed by Sira's side. Finally, after what felt like weeks, they reached the edge of a canyon. The air here was different, thick with energy, humming faintly as if alive. Strange crystals grew from the canyon walls, glowing softly. Sira dismounted, her eyes shining with both fear and awe. "We are close," she whispered. "The Heart of Echoes is near." Kane stood beside her, his body weary but his spirit strong. He looked at the glowing canyon, then at Sira. She met his gaze, and for the first time she did not see him as just a human outsider. She saw him as something more. The desert had tested him, and he had endured. He had proved himself not with strength alone, but with patience, kindness, and unshakable will. Sira's heart felt heavy with conflict. She had sworn to protect the ruins, to keep humans away, yet here was one who had earned his place. As the wind whispered through the canyon, she wondered what the Heart of Echoes would reveal. About him, about her, and about the bond slowly forming between them. The canyon walls glowed faintly as Kane and Sira stepped into the narrow passage. Crystals of blue and green shimmered along the walls, their light reflecting in the still pools of water scattered on the ground. The air hummed softly, a low vibration that resonated in Kane's chest. He reached out his hand, but the light pulsed back as if responding to him. Sira's eyes narrowed. She had felt the same thing before, but never this strongly. The Heart of Echoes was near. She could feel it in every vibration of the crystal walls, in every small tremor underfoot. Her beast stomped softly, its eyes glowing faintly in the light. The giant creature had been her protector all her life, and even it seemed aware of the strange energy around them. "Keep close," Sira said quietly, almost afraid of her own voice. "It does not like strangers." Kane nodded, following carefully. His boots sank slightly in the soft sand, and he could feel every small pulse in the ground. "I feel it," he said, pointing to the walls. "The stones alive?" Sira's lips pressed together. "Not alive like you are," she said, "but aware. It listens. It chooses." They moved deeper, twisting through passages lined with crystal pillars. Some were smooth, others jagged, all humming softly. Kane ran his hand along one and the hum shifted in pitch. He looked at Sira, eyes wide. "It knows me," he whispered. Sira shook her head, uncertain. Her people had told her only their bloodline could touch the heart. Outsiders, humans, explorers, all of them were forbidden. The relic was sacred, yet here was Kane, a human, and the heart seemed to respond to him. She glanced at him, then at the glowing pillars, her mind racing. Could it be that the legends were wrong? Could humans be connected to the heart after all? As they reached a large chamber, Kane stopped. The walls opened into a wide cavern. At its center floated a crystal, glowing brighter than all the others. Its light was soft, golden, and yet strong, filling the room with warmth. The Heart of Echoes. Sira dismounted immediately, her staff in hand. She stood in front of Kane, placing herself between him and the crystal. "Do not touch it," she warned. "Only my people." "Only one of us can touch the heart." Kane held up his hands. "I will not take," he said gently. "I only want to understand." The heart pulsed as if hearing his words. Kane's chest tingled with a strange warmth. Images flashed in his mind. Visions of distant stars, alien civilizations, and humans walking across worlds long before he was born. He blinked, feeling dizzy from the sudden rush of knowledge. Sira noticed his reaction. Her heart beat faster. What is it showing you?" she asked. Kane looked at her, his eyes wide. "Our history, maybe?" "Your history, too. We are connected." Sira shook her head, confused and amazed at once. She had been trained to guard the heart against humans, to prevent them from discovering the truth. But now she saw the glowing crystal respond to Kane's voice, his presence. The legends of separation, of humans being outsiders, suddenly seemed incomplete. The heart pulsed again, stronger this time. Kane felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of clarity he had never known. The crystal's light reflected in Sira's eyes, showing her the possibility she had never imagined. "What is this?" she whispered. Kane stepped forward carefully, his hands open and flat. "I think it wants to show us something." "I am not taking it. Only listening." The chamber trembled softly as images grew clearer. Sira stepped closer, her staff lowering. Her voice was quiet, almost in awe. "The stories, my elders, they said humans would never understand, but maybe they were wrong." For a moment neither spoke. Kane watched as the heart's golden light surrounded him. In his mind he could see the distant past, humans and Sira's people walking across the same stars, sharing knowledge, planting colonies, and watching over planets together. Over time the lines of memory faded, the civilizations spreading apart but not fully disconnected. Something in humanity's essence remained compatible with the heart. Sira's hand trembled as she lowered her staff completely. She had never imagined such a revelation. "Could it recognize you?" she asked softly, pointing to Kane. He nodded slowly. "I do not know why, but it does. I feel it." The heart's glow expanded, filling the cavern with warmth that pushed back fear. Sira's beast shifted, leaning its massive head toward Kane, as if sensing the bond forming. Even the creature, fierce and wary by nature, seemed calmed by the energy in the room. The alien girl stepped closer to Kane, her curiosity overcoming her caution. "Do you understand what this means?" she asked. Kane shook his head slowly. "I only feel it. Maybe it wants peace, not war. Maybe it wants friendship." The heart pulsed once more, brighter than before. Kane heard whispers, soft, melodic, almost like voices carried on the wind. They were not words he could speak, but he understood them anyway. "The past connects us. The future depends on choice. The heart sees the truth of all who come with honor." Sira gasped, her staff trembling in her hands. Her people had never heard these words, had never touched the heart in this way. Yet here, standing beside Kane, she realized that the prophecy might have been incomplete. Humans were not meant to conquer or steal. They were capable of something far deeper: connection. Kane looked at Sira, his eyes gentle but strong. "We do not have to fight," he said. "We can learn. Together." Sira's lips pressed together, fighting the tide of her emotions. She had been trained her whole life to see humans as threats, and yet this human, this one, had proven patience, courage, and respect. He had survived the desert trials, faced every challenge without complaint, and now stood in the presence of her people's greatest treasure, without fear or greed. Her heart shifted. Slowly she lowered her staff completely. Perhaps I misjudged you," she said quietly. The heart pulsed again, its light wrapping around Kane and Sira in a golden embrace. In that moment, the alien girl realized the truth. Humanity was not just a distant race wandering through the stars. They were a part of the galaxy's story, and now Kane's presence had reminded her people of a bond long forgotten. The chamber grew still. The humming of the crystals softened. Kane looked around, taking in the sight of the glowing heart, the reflections of the crystals, and Sira's awestruck expression. He did not reach out, but he felt the connection. He felt the shared history, the memories of past alliances, the promise of future understanding. Sira took a deep breath, the weight of her duty and the pride of her people balancing against the hope Kane had brought. The heart. "It chose you," she whispered. "Or perhaps it recognizes that not all humans are the same." Kane smiled faintly, exhausted but fulfilled. "We only want to understand," he said simply. The heart pulsed one final time, a soft, steady glow that seemed to echo in their hearts. The lesson was clear. Connection, respect, and patience could overcome fear and suspicion. Sira realized that the trials, the journey, and even her own caution had prepared her for this moment. Kane had endured not through strength alone, but through compassion, patience, and courage. For the first time, she felt that humans and her people might not be so different after all. The chamber seemed to settle, the crystals dimming slightly as if satisfied with what they had witnessed. Sira mounted her beast, her eyes lingering on Kane. "Come," she said softly. "It is time to leave. But remember what we have learned here." "The heart will remember." Kane nodded, following her through the glowing canyon. The desert outside awaited them, vast and endless, but the burden of fear had lifted. The heart of echoes had spoken, and now both human and alien carried its message. Understanding could bridge worlds. As they walked together, Sira realized that her life would never be the same. Kane had passed not through might but through patience and heart, and in doing so, he had shown the first spark of a bond that could unite their species across the stars. The desert stretched endlessly before Kane and Sira as they emerged from the glowing canyon. The twin suns were high, casting long shadows over the sand dunes. The journey back was quiet at first, each of them lost in thought. Kane's boots sank into the sand, tired but steady. His mind replayed the visions from the heart of echoes, the shared history and the connection he had felt with Sira's people. Sira rode her beast slowly, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Her heart felt heavy, a mixture of pride and uncertainty. She had protected the heart of echoes her whole life, and now the truth had been revealed. A human, this human, had not only survived her trials but had proven his worth without fear, without force, without greed. It was a revelation she could not ignore. The beast shifted beneath her, snorting softly. Its golden eyes watched Kane with calm intelligence. It had grown accustomed to him, had sensed his honesty, his patience. Even Sira had to admit that he belonged here, at least for this moment, if not forever. Do you understand what you have done? Sierra asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the wind. Kane looked up at her, brushing sand from his arm. I do not know everything, he admitted. But I think I showed that humans can care, that we can respect, that we can understand. Sierra's gaze softened. She had expected confrontation, mistrust, maybe even hostility. Instead, she had found patience, endurance, and compassion. Traits her people valued but had forgotten could exist in humans. You survived the desert, she said. You endured every trial I set, and yet you did not complain, you did not fight unfairly, and you protected me. Kane smiled faintly, brushing the sweat from his forehead. We do not leave others behind. That is what we are taught, what we try to live by. The words carried weight, and Sierra felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had never met a human who spoke with such honesty, who lived according to their own truth rather than ambition or fear. As they traveled, the desert began to change. The sands became softer, the dunes gentler, and small green plants began to appear. It was as if the desert itself had recognized the bond forming between them and allowed passage. Sierra's beast walked calmly, no longer tense or restless. Even the harsh wind seemed to soften, whispering through the dunes like an approving voice. Sierra looked at Kane. When my elders find out, what will they say? She asked. Humans are not welcome here. They are not allowed near the heart of echoes. Kane paused. He could see the worry in her eyes. Maybe they will fear me. Maybe they will not understand. But I did not come to take, only to learn, and now I will leave only what I have learned. Sierra considered this. Her tribe had always been cautious, afraid of outsiders. But now, seeing Kane's honesty and patience, she wondered if fear was no longer necessary. Perhaps there could be trust. Perhaps humans and her people could walk the galaxy together, learning from one another. The journey continued in silence for a while. The sun began to set, painting the desert in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Kane stopped and looked at the horizon, feeling the warmth of the sun's fading. He could feel the heart of echoes still within him, a soft pulse reminding him of the history he had glimpsed. Sierra's voice broke the quiet. There is one choice I must make, she said softly. I can protect the heart and follow the rules of my people, or I can honor what the heart has shown me and allow humans to share in this knowledge. Kane looked at her, waiting. He did not want to pressure her. He understood the weight of responsibility she carried. She was a guardian, and this decision was hers alone. Sierra took a deep breath, her hand resting on the beast's mane. She looked back at the glowing canyon they had left behind, then at Kane. Her heart made a decision. You may pass, she said finally. Not as a trespasser, not as a thief, but as an ally. The heart sees your truth. Kane's eyes widened and a smile spread across his face. Thank you, he said simply. The beast snorted softly and Sierra patted its neck. She had made her choice and it felt right. For the first time she felt a sense of hope for her people. Hope that humans and aliens could share understanding rather than fear. The return journey to her tribe was easier. Kane walked beside Sierra, no longer struggling, no longer uncertain. Each step was lighter, filled with the knowledge that the bond they had forged was real. The desert, which had once tested him relentlessly, now seemed to welcome them, the winds gentle, the sand soft beneath their feet. As they approached the tribal settlement, Sierra's elders appeared on the horizon. They were tall, majestic figures, their robes flowing in the desert wind. Kane could feel their suspicion immediately. They had never allowed humans near the heart of echoes. And here he was, standing beside Sierra. Sierra stepped forward. They have passed the trial, she said firmly, her voice carrying across the sand. He is not here to steal, not here to fight. He is here to learn, as we are meant to teach. The heart has recognized him. The elders studied Kane closely, their eyes sharp. They had known humans only through stories of conquest and theft. But now, standing in the presence of one who had endured the desert and the trials with honesty and patience, they saw something different. Finally, one elder stepped forward. If the heart recognizes him, she said slowly, then perhaps our people have been too quick to judge. Let him stay, at least for the lessons to be shared. Kane bowed slightly. I am honored, he said, keeping his tone humble. I will only learn and respect. The elders nodded, and the tension eased. The desert seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Kane had not taken. He had only listened, only learned, and in doing so had earned trust not with strength or weapons, but with patience, courage, and compassion. Over the following days, Cain learned from Sira and her people. He studied their language, their history, and their connection to the heart of echoes. He shared stories of humanity, of Earth, and of the stars they had explored. In turn, the tribe listened, surprised at how humans could endure challenges, care for others, and walk with respect for new worlds. Sira watched him closely, her heart swelling with pride. She had chosen correctly. This human was not like the others, and the heart had shown her that her people's path did not have to be one of isolation and fear. The bond between human and alien grew stronger. Cain helped with the daily life of the tribe, learning their ways, riding the desert beast with caution, and gaining the trust of every elder and child. They shared meals, stories, and laughter. The desert, which had once been harsh and unforgiving, became a place of friendship and understanding. Weeks later, Cain stood at the edge of the desert, looking out at the horizon. His mission as an explorer was nearly complete. He had mapped the region, learned the history, and most importantly, formed a bond that could bridge worlds. Sira approached him on the beast, her eyes bright with unspoken words. She stopped beside him and dismounted. "You must leave soon," she said softly. "Your people will wonder where you are, and your journey continues." Cain nodded, understanding. "I will go," he said. "But I will return. I want to bring others slowly, carefully. I want them to learn as I have learned, to respect as I have been taught." Sira smiled faintly. "Then the heart will be safe. And perhaps the galaxy will see that humans are not all the same, that we can walk together, not fight." He extended his hand. She took it, gripping it firmly. The desert wind swirled around them, carrying the soft hum of the crystals far in the distance. "You passed the greatest trial," she said. "Not because of your strength, but because of your heart." Cain smiled. "And you chose wisely, Sira. You trusted the right human." The beast stirred, snorting softly as if agreeing. Together they watched the twin suns sink lower, painting the desert in gold and violet. Cain knew that his journey was not over, but this chapter had changed everything. The heart of echoes had shown its power not through destruction, but through understanding. Humanity had proven itself once more, not with weapons, but with endurance, compassion, and respect. And the galaxy, if only a few knew, had already begun to wonder what other bonds might be possible. As Cain prepared to leave the desert behind, Sira watched him go, a quiet smile on her face. Her choice had not only protected her people, but it had opened the door to a new era. The Guardian had chosen trust. The human had chosen understanding. And together, they had written a story that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The desert wind whispered around them, carrying a message for those willing to listen. Humanity could endure, humanity could learn, and humanity could unite. And sometimes all it took was one human and one alien girl to show the galaxy the way.